everyone. We are here. Let's see, is this working right? We're having some technical issues today, but we are here for another episode of the Kickass Relationship Show. And my guest today, we were just talking before we started this live feed, and we're talking about the topic of blended families, which of course that's the topic of the day, and how for many of us, we struggle with this and we don't quite know where to go. We don't know what to do. We feel like we're the only ones, but it is such a hot issue for so many. And so we're going to be visiting that whole topic and talking about this couple's experience of getting married, figuring out how the heck to make it work, coming very close to getting a divorce after I think a year or two. But somehow they figured out a way to make it work. And now Lori and David Sims, they've been together for 9 years. Things are much, much better, and we're going to be hearing their story. So I'm going to bring them on right now. Please welcome them to our show. Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi. So good to see you.
You too.
So Lori and David, tell us, we want to know everything. But
No, you don't want to know everything.
Before we get to everything, tell us just a brief synopsis of your story, of kind of how this journey has happened. So start from, when you guys first got married. I know that you did some background. You did some work to try to make it as smooth as possible, but that didn't seem to help you too much. So talk about that a little bit.
No, we did. We tried everything that we could think of. We didn't expect it to be easy. We knew that blended families have a very low success rate. And so we wanted to talk to people, read articles, listen to podcasts, everything that we could to be prepared. And not that that was going to make it completely easy, but, we thought we had a good handle on things. And we even went to a counselor that we knew and talked to him before we got married. What can we expect? What are things we can do to make this kind of smooth, and that didn't help at all. 2 years in, and it was pure horrendous crap.
Pure horrendous crap.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that's as we can put it.
And I appreciate your authenticity and your honesty.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I read somewhere, I think maybe in your bio, that you said you ended up going to a counselor eventually who we're going to go into more detail on this, but basically that said to change everything that you heard. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had met with the counselor before we got married. And so he's the one we went back to when we were, on the verge of divorce. We were talking about, David had mentioned me moving out, which my response was, if I move out, I'm not coming back. I'm done. I'm not uprooting my life again and uprooting my son and trying this crap. There was no motivation to make it work even. We were just tired and frustrated, and nobody was happy. The in-laws were involved, and they hated me, and the kids hated me. The bio mom hated me. David hated that. The kids hated me, and, he was stuck in the middle and didn't know what to do. And so we went back to that counselor, and he knew we would be back. That's the funny thing is, when I called him, he's like, hey.
I'm like, your call.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Before we get there, because I want to go deep into that, before we get there, tell us a little bit more about what you experienced with your family. So David, how many kids did you have coming into the marriage?
So I have 4 kids. 3 are triplets, and they're only a year and a half apart. So I had one.
Not the triplets.
Of course, not the triplets. Yeah, the triplets are a year and a half apart. It's amazing. But yeah, I had one kid, and then a year and a half later I had triplets. So they were all very close in age. And
all boys.
They were about, I think, 8
and 9 when we met.
Yeah, 8 and 9 when we met. So that's kind of what she was walking into. She had a 3-year-old at the time. All boys. All 5 are boys.
Going on there. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell us what the biggest challenges were for each of you dealing with blending this family. So let's start with David. Tell me what your challenges were that you
Lori was my challenge.
Lori was the challenge. Okay, so on that a little.
She was my biggest challenge.
It's true. I can't say anything.
It was hindsight. I can tell you differently than what I would have told you then. Then I would have said she was the problem. She was the challenge. The kids were a challenge as well, but they were a challenge in a different way. Now I think I can probably tell you a little different. That it wasn't necessarily all her being the challenge. It was the fact that I had very misplaced expectations of what a blended family should look like. And because of those expectations, I was expecting things that weren't going to happen, or at least not in the time frame in which I thought they should. So that was very frustrating. I was trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Things weren't happening naturally, nor were they happening in a time frame that I thought they should. And so everything was just extremely frustrating for me.
Okay, got it. So when you mentioned that Lori was the biggest challenge, giggling about that, but I know that that's a common complaint for so many relationships, right, regardless of whether it's blended families or not. So it actually isn't funny at all. And it's very true. A lot of us blame others for what's going on. And so it's super common. So expand on that. What do you mean Lori was a problem? What exactly did you see was the problem that she was causing?
Well,
not trying to start fights. I just want to peel back some layers because this is so common for so many couples.
Right. So the problems that we were having was Lori was walking into a situation where she was expected to take on some duties that honestly she was not prepared for, nor should she had been placed in that position. Things like, you're going to have to take over the role of getting the kids to school, and you need to make sure they're up on time. She would try to do the traditional role of, cooking dinner. And sometimes the kids would be like, oh, I hate what she cooks. It's nasty. I don't want it. And there were just a lot of things we were trying to do that would fit the role of a traditional family or a biological family that just does not work very well in a blended family. At least it didn't for us, and a lot of other people that we know it doesn't work well either. And so that was a big frustration for us. Part of it was that I was putting those expectations on her. I expect you to do these things because that's the roles. And then the other parts of it was she was frustrated trying to help me do things, and it was coming across to the kids as, she's forcing her will upon us, and she's not our mom, and and all this kind of stuff. Even though she saw it as being, I'm really, really trying to help David. The kids were seeing it as this lady's popped into the house, and even though they knew her beforehand, it was still after that wedding day things changed. Now she's here all the time, and she's telling us what to do. And just didn't go very well.
And we didn't really discuss what my role would be before we got married. It was almost just assumed. You assume that as a stepmom, you're going to help cook. You're going to help, the normal roles of a female in a family, we'll say, not even a motherly figure. And it just, like I said, it was kind of understood. And then it did get overwhelming because, my gosh, 5 youngins, 5. And it was crazy. I went from being a single mom, with one baby, to living in a zoo. and I've got 2 sisters, and they're both girls. So, we were taught to sit on the couch properly. You don't bounce on the furniture. So even things like that we struggled with because of the differences in how I was raised. And, David's pretty cool with the kids, and he had a good relationship, still does, of course, with the kids, but he likes to play, and that's just not something that I dealt well with. So that was causing me frustration. And on top of that, if the kids were complaining about me cooking, I'm not cooking for them. They can eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but everything that I felt like that I was trying to do was a fight and a struggle. And if I would wake them up in the morning, it would be, I'd say, hey, time to get up, rise and shine, or whatever. And to them, they would think that I was screaming, get out of bed, So he was stuck in the middle of that too.
Yeah. And so did you feel like, for both of you, David and for Lori, that you were taking sides for the kids? Like taking the kids' sides, was that ever an issue?
Well,
do your little thing of it being in between.
Yeah. I mean, I was in the middle constantly. You know, I like to tell people that my face was all smashed because I had Lori on one side. She's my wife, and I love her, and I want to stand by her and be on her side. But on the other side, I have my kids, and my kids are my kids, and I love them. And standing behind them, there's grandparents, biological parents, and all these. There's just all this pressure. Fighting each other, and I'm in the middle, and everybody's looking at me saying, fix it. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I can't fix it, but for both sides, somebody has to give. There's got to be compromise. And it's like, everybody's got to kind of win a little, everybody's got to lose a little bit as well. And it's a very tough battle.
Yeah. And a lot of times I hear people talk about feeling second. I'm the second wife, or I feel second to the kids. And I can understand how they feel that way. Of course, in the beginning, I don't know that I felt that way because we were all pretty involved. The first year was okay. The second year is just when it started getting bad. And, you've got everybody involved, and it's chaos, and it's a spiral anger and resentment. And I didn't like his kids. They made me mad. And no, I didn't love his kids. And Lord, you're going to get all kind of emails about this. I know, but it's okay not to love your stepkids. You can't force who you love. Number one. Number two, you've got to form a bond with these kids, and each one of them are different, and each one of them have experienced the divorce a different way. And you kind of have to be, at first when you're kind of step back, it's like you don't even engage at all, because you've got to build that time for that resentment to settle. And then you can, build that bond with them. And yeah, sometimes you still have to step back. I mean, they're kids, they're a pain in the butt, but you kind of become the cool aunt. It's kind of what we decided that worked for us.
Yeah. And I mean, now she has an amazing relationship with the kids, and, she loves them. They love her. They leave out the door. I mean, the triplets are now 18. And if one of them's visiting, two of the triplets are in the Air Force, and the oldest is in the Air Force as well. So 3 of them are in the Air Force now.
I made it. Oh, Lord, hallelujah.
But the one that didn't go in the Air Force, he was actually visiting last week. And, before he leaves out the door, he's like, love you, Lori. And I'm like, wait, what about me? So they have a great relationship with her now.
Well, that's nice to see. So, okay, so Lori, I don't want to leave you out, so I want to know from your perspective, what were the biggest challenges from your point of view?
The kids did not listen to me.
Okay.
And, I'm not young, so I was raised where your parents could beat you half to death, and they didn't call, child services on you or anything. I mean, you were dealing physically most of the time. And now, granted, I didn't do that with them, but I would raise my voice. My mom was a hollerer. So, that's kind of, when I'm getting mad, that's what happens. You raise your voice, and they don't listen till you're about to flip out, Yeah. And so they wouldn't listen to me, so I felt disrespected. And also with my son, I felt like they bullied him. That's a big thing. There's a fine line between, are they having brotherly conflicts, or are they bullying my kid? And a lot of times I would notice I took it more personal than my son did, because I would tell him, come on, we're going to go somewhere just to get away. And he's like, no, I want to stay. So I'd leave him here with them, and I'd leave for a little while just to regroup,
That's so interesting. So he didn't necessarily feel like he was being ganged up against. Is that right?
No, and there are 5 boys in a house, and they were rough.
He's 5 years old.
Yeah, they were rough. I mean, I take the blame. I brought them up rough housing with them and playing very rough with them. So they still, even today, I mean, they'll go out in the yard and start trying to fight each other just for fun. Mm-hmm. And so even at the age of 8 and 9, we were in martial arts, and we threw each other around all the time. And so now this 3-year-old comes in, he's diving on top of everybody.
And he always got hurt. And then I'd get mad.
Uh-huh.
I remember one time I found this out years after it happened. Apparently my son wrecked his bike in the woods, and they were all together. They drug him to the clubhouse at the grandparents' house and told him to stay till he quit crying.
Okay, so how did you change this around? Because it sounds like you both have very different parenting styles. So,
Well, actually, that's interesting. We took a test, like a 100-question test, for married couples before we got married. We had one answer that were one. Our parenting philosophies were the same. Our morals were the same. Financially, I mean, all this stuff was the same. So we're like, okay, this is going to be good, you know? Well, what you realize is you don't parent like you think you should.
good point. Good.
And so in my case, I don't parent like I think because I don't want my son going, well, I'll go live with my daddy. You know, then you have the guilty parent syndrome right before they go, well, usually all the time, but a lot of times before they go to the other parent, you're like, oh, I didn't spend enough time with them. I didn't do anything with them while they were here. And even if it's only 2 days. And David, in the beginning, we had his kids like 11 out of 14 days. And then she decided not long after we got married, maybe a year or two, that might be where all the crap started, honestly. She decided to do 50-50. And that made it worse because they were getting babied by her while, you know, every other week and coming back to us, and we would tell them, do their clothes. Well, the next thing you know, we're slave drivers. I mean, it's just so different for them. And they weren't used to all that. And they were used to mama babying them.
Yeah. And then, you know, when kids were home, I had them for a week, and then I wouldn't have them for a week, which was very difficult for me to get used to. I mean, I did not want to be an every other week father when I had kids. So it wasn't something that I adjusted well to. So I didn't want my kids to come home and then feel like they were being fussed at or they couldn't have a good time. And so, you know, I really struggled with, you know, what we call the guilty parent syndrome. You know, I felt guilty that they were in, so I didn't discipline the way they would have been disciplined had, you know, that had not happened. And so, no, we didn't parent. And I can certainly say I did not parent the way I was parenting before, nor the way I thought I should be parenting because of the dynamics and the emotions around that.
And it would make me mad. And, you know, because I'm thinking, my God, do something. You know, your kid just did whatever, and he's just kind of like laid back about it. And I'm not like that, you know. So when he kind of sit back, it took me a while to realize that, hey, I'm doing the same thing with my kid. I'm not going to fuss at him right before he goes to his dad's. Right when he comes back, I don't want to fuss at him. You know, I want him to be glad to come home. You know, you don't want your only time with these kids to be spent disciplining them.
You can tolerate your kid 100 times more than anybody else's kid.
and that's something else that people don't realize. And they go into this thinking, okay, well, they're kids. All kids are annoying. No. You can handle. He could sit there and watch his kid do something and not respond. My kid do the same exact thing, and it's, what are you doing? You know, whatever.
Yeah, there's something about being a parent and then trying to step into being a parent of other. I mean, there's so many dynamics that we're talking about, quite frankly, that it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming when you really get down to it and what you think about. You mentioned a number of things. One, dealing with the biological parent and their parenting style, and then their guilt that they're bringing in as well. Because I'm assuming both of them had some guilt. I think that's just part of going through this whole experience, and just trying to make it all work. So let's get there. Let's talk about what you finally did to switch things around.
Okay. So we went to the counselor. And we're sitting there, and he looks at me and he says, they're not your kids. And I'm like, duh, I know how many kids I've had, you know. But then at the same time, it kind of hurt my feelings. And I'm like, wait a minute, now I'm a little sensitive, you know. And I was like, I understand that. And every time I'd say something, he'd go, they are not your kids. Like, that's all this man would say to me. And so I'm like, dude, you have fell off your bike and hit your head. You know, I know they're not my kids, but I don't want them to grow up and be disrespectful or struggle in life or have rotten teeth or stink. You know, I mean, it's just, you try to help out. And so we were leaving, and we were cutting up, kind of making fun of him, going, they are not your kids. They are not your kids. And I looked at David and I said, they are not your kids. And we started laughing. And so that's where Nacho Kids comes from. You know, I like to call it the Southernese, where we mix words and drop syllables and, you know, whatever. But it hit me, and I am not kidding when I say this, it was like a ray of sunshine from heaven. I was creating my own misery. I'm not their parent. If he didn't care if they were rotted out of their head, why did I? And it's not that he didn't care, but I was the one on top of it. Women are on top of those things. Go take a shower, go brush your teeth, do whatever. And so he would be working, and I would tell him to go brush your teeth or take a shower, and they would ignore me, and it would make me mad. Well, guess what? If I step back, I eliminate all of that. I don't have them mad at me for me telling them what to do. I don't put him in the middle of him feeling like he's got to choose between me and them. And I don't have that negative interaction with everybody else, including the in-laws, because, again, I've stepped back. I'm more of David's helper, or even an adult roommate to them, to where if they knew they needed help, I was here. But otherwise, I would step back. I didn't do homework. I didn't cook for them. I didn't tell them to do laundry. It got so bad before the nacho thing that I refused to be alone with the kids because we were going to fight. So it blew up. And, that was another reason we got to where we were. But by me stepping back and not any of this stuff, it took a long time. And I'm not going to lie, it probably a year that I fully disengaged. And when I say that, I wasn't rude to the kids. And people have a misconception sometimes about how the Nacho Kids works. And what it is just stepping back and not reacting emotionally to things you cannot change. And you've got the kids, and I can't change how they respond to me. They're going to do what they're going to do. So if I don't engage them, I limit the amount of negative interaction I can have with them. So during that time frame, I stepped back. I watched every episode of House Hunters International when they were here. And I remember after about a year, I was sitting there and I was watching House Hunters International, and I heard David and the kids cutting up. And I'm like, I feel kind of alone. Why aren't y'all laughing with me? Kind of thing. And I was like, I want to be part of the fun. And so I started slowly re-engaging. I walk through and go, what are y'all doing? Or, oh, I like that shirt. And over time, I've learned all kind of tools and methods, like the say 5 positives to 1 negative thing. You want to have positive interaction with the kids. And now it is better than I ever thought it would be. Now, I'm not going to lie. It's not for everybody. Not everybody needs to do it. And it's hard. It was hard for me to keep my mouth shut. I mean, it was hard because you're almost naturally wanting to parent. So you're fighting that urge, and then you see him do something and you think, well, he should have done it differently. Oh, back up. That's something. You can't expect somebody to parent like you think they should. So I had to come to that realization. And, one of the things that we want to stress to people with blended families is it takes time. You can't expect changes to just happen overnight, and you've got to build that relationship. And for me, it was to figure out what my role was that fit best within this family. And a lot of times it was me stepping back and not having control, which again is hard to do, especially for control freak kind of people like me. But in the end, I have discovered that it helped me outside of the blended family. If I get aggravated driving down the road and somebody's driving, right on your bumper, and I start getting stressed about it, I'm like, whoa, hang on. I don't have to deal with this. I'll pull over, let them pass me, and I get back on the road, and I'm like, la, 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 la. It's something that we really worked hard for. And one other thing I want to mention is we refuse to give up. That was something you've got to do. You got to refuse to give up. Because if you have in the back mind, I can leave, or, we'll split up if this doesn't work, then you're not putting in 100%.
Right. Yeah, that's a big point. That's with any marriage, is that kind of that forever thing in the back of your mind. So, what did you do? I want to get into some specifics. What did you do when you asked the kids, hey, you need to take a shower? And they said, and I know we're going way, way back because you changed your approach. Mm-hmm. And they said, no, you're not my mom, or gave you that kind of attitude. What would you do next?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so you would keep on nagging him, and then finally you were able to step back and say, hands off. These are not my 4 boys. I have my son, but I'm not going to parent them. So therefore, you totally backed off. You quit cooking for them, doing their laundry, I'm assuming, just everything.
No, yep.
And
Nothing.
you notice, like, what did you notice, David, as far as the dynamics at that point between the kids and with Lori?
You talking about before she started to disengage?
Once she did disengage. When she
did.
Okay, I'm not your mom, so I'm back.
Right.
This is the shocking part to most people.
Yeah. When she was engaged, it was almost like an overnight change in that the stress levels of everybody went way down. There was much less conflict. And then it was just a matter of, the kids were like, wow, what's going on? But everybody was trying to figure out what's going on.
Lori's not fussing at us.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like
sick. Is she dying?
I mean, we didn't really have a conversation about, hey, I'm going to, she's going to do this and we're going to see what happens. We didn't really know. We kind of stumbled across, what was going to happen and how it was going to work. But when the kids saw a difference and they saw that, things are changing and they're different and they're better, then they kind of started being a little bit more on board with, things are going better. So we're going to kind of give you a chance, to figure this out. And so what she was doing before, like she would, with the whole, go take a shower thing is, she'd holler at them 2 or 3 times and then she'd be hollering at me, you need to make sure they get a shower, whatever. And then, cause I worked a lot, late. And so, she's dragging me into these battles. And then it becomes, the kids are mad, she's mad, now she's dragged me into it, now I'm mad. And then it went from that to, with her stepping back, I can have dialogue with the kids. I tell them to go get in the shower. They don't give me the same pushback, but if they did, they don't get mad at me like they do her. I have the responsibility and the relationship there, so I can do those things. And if they get mad at me, and maybe, they're mad for 5 minutes, maybe, whatever. They get mad at us like, for a week.
Yeah. And this is a funny thing too. When we went to the counselor, we took the kids and, they're making it like I'm abusing them. I mean, really, that's how they're making the grandparents feel and David feel and everything. So the counselor sat down with them and he said, what is something that Lori could do to make your relation better? Take us to Disney. Oh. Abused kids ain't going to say that taking them to Disney will make them feel better. But that tells you how much they felt that they had power into, I guess, our relationship. They were determined to split us up. I mean, and when you got 4 people fighting, well, you got to add the other family members too.
Yeah. I mean, we literally, at that particular meeting with the counselor, we actually had everybody there. Like we had brought in the my parents, because there were the grandparents involved. We had brought them in. We even had my ex and her husband brought in at one point because, I mean, it's like everybody come in because, we want to understand what's happening and also how everybody views everything because, everybody kind of has their own little reality of how things are going and what the struggles really are. So we thought the kids were struggling and having a very hard time with the blended family situation. But whenever you give them an option to say what would make it better and they say, take me to the world, all of a sudden
they just didn't like me.
Yeah. All of a sudden it kind of changes your perspective on how they're really suffering,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, oh my God, we could talk about this for hours because I know that there are so many questions and struggles. I mean, seriously, this is a huge topic. But since we cannot, tell us a little bit about Nacho Kids. Go into a little bit more details, nachokids.org, and what you offer and where we can find more information on it. I'm assuming it's nachokids.org, and that's where you can find more information. But give us kind of the elevator pitch on what you offer for that.
Well, first of all, it's nachokids.com. We were finally able to obtain .com, so that was good. I did Facebook groups and stuff and help people that were having struggles like us. And they started having success with what we termed as the Nacho Kids method. And, they would send me emails. Thank you so much. I feel like the weight of the world has been lifted off my shoulders. My relationship with my husband's better, stuff. And so we're like, okay, this is great. I've got to keep sharing it. And then through some trials and realizing time limitations and things like that, in the last 2 months, we created the Nacho Kids Academy. And it's where people can join the academy. There's a community that's safe. You don't have to worry about people having your information, like on Facebook and screenshotting stuff and sending it to people. And you don't have, you've got the community of people that really want help. And we have a library of courses that we're doing. We do the live Q&A calls and things like that. And we're having great success with that. One of the things that's frustrating to me is in the Facebook groups, you've got all these people, for instance, that they don't know what it is, but you don't really have a way to reach them because every time you comment on something, it gets moved down. So we were having trouble teaching people how to disengage properly or how to nacho properly, since that's the new term is how to nacho. And so we decided to start this and to do it to help blended families realize that you don't have to be ashamed of your struggles and to help you realize that, you can be successful and have a blended family, but your blend may be different than somebody else, but that doesn't mean it's not successful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both so much for sharing this with us, and we'll make sure that the URL is in the below the
below,
below, and it'll be on our website. So if you go to midoriverity.com, that's where you can find all this information with all of her resources, and get in touch because it sounds from what I'm hearing from you, there's so many things that we can do to make it smoother. And
there are, and there's so many factors and variables. If you come in, like he doesn't nacho my son that much because he came in at 3 years old. So he was able to build that bond with him. And there's just so many factors. And it's really sad that people don't have the resources to make this work. And what they don't realize is if you leave this relationship, the probability of ending up in another blended family relationship is quite high.
Yeah.
So make the one you've got work.
There you go. There you have it all summed up in a little snippet, but I agree with you. Make this one work. So thank you guys again, Lori and David Sims. We'll have your link below. Thank you for being with us and being so authentic and doing what you do to help other couples and other families and children to make it all work and not kill each other.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.